Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Wednesday, October 9th. Today is day 369. I'm joining you now from London. I'm very grateful. This is the last leg of my journey. I'll be returning back to DC in a few days. Um, but while I'm here, I'm meeting with diplomats, religious leaders, and other peace builders, people committed to doing everything we can to try to break the cycles of violence. Please pray for the people who are on the ground seeking to find a way forward in negotiations. Pray that we would have a breakthrough. I share this news to not only keep us informed, but also to give us data to pray over and information in our advocacy. So what's happened in the last 24 hours? One of the questions is, how can we understand what's happening between Israel and Hezbollah? In the short term, the hostilities kind of keep going back and forth to various degrees. Some days things are kind of quieter, other days things escalate. The death toll in Israel, there certainly have been people who've died. There have been fires. There are roughly, I've heard numbers from 60,000 to 100,000. I think the 100,000 number of people displaced includes the people in North Israel and along the Gaza envelope. And certainly every life that is lost absolutely matters. So I think that's really important to know that Israelis are being killed. The number of Israelis being killed is incredibly small compared to the number of Lebanese and certainly the number of people in Gaza who've been killed. And I don't have a total number in terms of Israelis killed on the north border. But I know that the number of Lebanese killed in the last couple of weeks is about 1,400 people, including civilians, medics, Hezbollah fighters. The IDF, in fact, said yesterday it had killed 50 Hezbollah operatives in attacks across Lebanon. And I'll just say the way the IDF reports is essentially the vast majority of men who are killed, you just call them an operative, you call them a militant, and then it's a justified death. The criteria of what it takes to be called Hezbollah or called, you could be the guy that serves someone's coffee in the morning and you're Hezbollah because you served a Hezbollah, official coffee. And I'm not trying to exaggerate. I'm just saying that that's one of the mechanisms by which there's a justification of the significant numbers of deaths. So 50 operatives killed in the past day. The Washington Post has said that as many as 2,119 people in Lebanon have been killed since October 8th, 2023. Hezbollah supports efforts that are aimed towards a ceasefire. The group's top officials said yesterday, this is the first time Hezbollah publicly endorsed a ceasefire that did not also include conditioning a ceasefire upon there being a truce in Gaza. I think I shared that yesterday as well. I did speak to a high-level diplomat this past week who said Israel has to realize that what's happening now is not sustainable. The U.S. is not going to pay the expense to have aircraft carriers, sitting off the coast, not one, but two. We're not going to pay the financial expense and the resource cost of this going on long term. Israel can't afford it. The Iron Dome cartridges alone cost somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 each. That is exorbitantly expensive. Nothing compares. The cost of that, when you think of hundreds of rockets coming towards Israel, is quite significant. Now, of course, the number of bombs that Israel has dropped on Gaza is a much, much higher number. But I think the point is, this is not sustainable for Israel in the long run. A quarter of the Lebanese territory is currently under Israeli military displacement orders. So 25% of Lebanon, according to the UN, they're saying that 1.2 million people have been displaced. Over the last 24 hours, 2 people, a man and a woman, were killed in the north and several others wounded over the course of 8 minutes when a barrage of rockets were fired. This is actually 2 people in Israel in the last 24 hours. So in North Israel, a man and a woman were just killed from Hezbollah rocket fire. 90 rockets were fired over the course of 8 minutes. Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets today. And so that was quite significant. Yesterday, 180 rockets were fired at Israel. And there were also 2 surface-to-surface missiles launched from Lebanon. The Israeli Air Force also bombed and attacked 185 Hezbollah positions and 45 Hamas targets in Gaza. Residents in an apartment complex in North Israel were trapped in a bomb shelter for 7 hours because a rocket landed next to a gas tank, but it did not explode. And Lebanon said that yesterday 36 people were killed and 137 people were wounded over the past day. They're actually, in Lebanese media, it was just reported that Joshua Tartakovsky, a 42-year-old Israeli citizen who also holds a British passport, was arrested yesterday in Beirut. Amid talks between the U.S. and Israel regarding U.S. opposition to an Israeli attack on Iran's oil installations in retaliation to Iran's unprecedented barrage of 180 ballistic missiles at Israel last week, Netanyahu delayed Gallant going to D.C. and instead insisted on a phone call with President Biden. That happened today. Netanyahu reportedly had been insisting that the Security Cabinet approve Israel's planned military action in Iran prior to Gallant's departure. Netanyahu not only spoke to Biden, but also to Vice President Kamala Harris today. U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal that Israel has so far refused to disclose its military response strategies against Iran to the Biden administration. And U.S. officials are really frustrated by being repeatedly caught off guard by Israeli moves in Gaza and Lebanon. And they're trying to prevent further regional escalation. And I just want to say, like, this is another case where I'm like, well, hello. I mean, like, the Biden administration should not be surprised. They've done absolutely nothing to warrant respect from the Netanyahu administration. They've had leverage all along. They've never used it. I mean, for 12 months, they've had leverage. So now it is clear that the Biden administration doesn't have the backbone. They've not stood up to Israel, and Netanyahu is walking all over Biden. Biden doesn't have a backbone. Netanyahu knows it, and that's where we're at. 7 people were wounded today in a stabbing attack. There have been several of these. If you've been hearing about, there was a shooting attack near Jaffa, I think last week, and then there was an attack in Beersheba. So 7 people were wounded today in a stabbing attack across 4 different locations in the central Israeli city of Hadera. The assailant was a 36-year-old Israeli Arab who was shot in the leg and arrested. It's significant to note it's very, very unusual for an assailant not to just be killed on the spot. So that's quite significant. And it's important to note the fabric of Israeli society is very divided. There was a letter addressed to Israeli cabinet ministers and the IDF chief of staff from 130 Israeli soldiers who warned that they will no longer serve unless the government works to obtain a hostage ceasefire deal. In the West Bank, the Israeli army said it, quote, killed 5 wanted Palestinian terrorists, end quote. The city's Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade's commander was reportedly among the dead. Palestinian officials also said today that Israel bombed central and northern Gaza. 18 people were killed, including 5 children and 2 women. Dozens and dozens of people continue to die every day between Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel and Lebanon. Honestly, in the humanitarian and development community, and this is really what was feared, Israel the last few days has called for all of North Gaza to evacuate. I gave you that number in the last couple of days. It's more than 100,000 people in the north. Israel also declared that area a hostile enemy zone, a combat zone. I can't remember the term right now. And essentially that meant that they would shoot anything that moved. And so according to local residents and footage shared with CNN, who's documented their journey, Palestinians fleeing sites of Israel's renewed military offensive in North Gaza are being shot at as they evacuate. Now, we've seen this happen on videos before. We feared that this is what would happen, and now it seems to be the case. The death toll in an Israeli strike on a refugee camp in central Gaza has risen to 30, according to the local hospital. And the death toll in Gaza is now at least 42,010 Palestinians killed. The UN Secretary General Guterres expressed concern over a draft Israeli law that would prevent the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, from continuing its operations in the OPT. That is really, really significant. There's still like 2 or 3 more stages, but my understanding is it passed its first round, or just the fact that it was even drafted is quite concerning. Israeli military also carried out airstrikes on a residential building in Syria and Damascus in an attempt to assassinate a high-ranking Hezbollah official. 7 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on Damascus. Israel has rejected the International Criminal Court chief prosecutor's request for arrest warrants to the prime minister and defense minister over their conduct in the war on Gaza, according to court filings recently made public. And again, I just would encourage you, if you don't or did not have the opportunity to join us earlier this week during the Vigil of Lament, commemorating the 1-year marker of October 7th, it's really worth watching, praying through, and joining us. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't stay in the game without you. So very grateful for you being with us. May God go before us in the name of Christ. Amen.